All right, so good evening, everyone. It is now 6:36. I want to welcome everyone to the Bronx Community Board 7's Veterans Committee meeting. My name is Chad Royer, and I'm the chair. Yes, good evening. My name is Chad Royer. I'm the chair of the Veterans Committee. I just want to go over some guidelines. Carly, if you can help me with something real quick.
Yes, let's, who is Zoom user?
That might be me. It's Greg Faulkner.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
Yes.
I'm good.
I'll go
Okay.
ahead and rename you.
Okay, I can do it. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Sure. So I'm going to read off the guidelines as we start the meeting. So good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Royer. I'm the chair of the Veterans Committee at Bronx Community Board 7. The committee agenda is as follows, and I'll just read that to you shortly. Are you able to share, Carla?
Yes.
Sure.
Hold on, let me
All right.
find them. I have too many tabs open. Hold on.
Same here. I think I got it. I got it. I got it. No, I don't have it.
Okay, good. I mean, are you trying to share the agenda or the meeting guidelines?
The agenda. I
The
thought I had
agenda.
it. And
Okay.
I
No,
closed
I'll
it.
find it. You can start with the meeting guidelines and then I'll find them and share my screen.
Sure. So as we continue, on April 20th, 2023, Mayor Adams issued Executive Order 387, extending the state of emergency through May 20th, 2023. Accordingly, boards are able to continue to act under the state of emergency section of the Video Conferencing Law, Chapter 56, Part WW. This allows the board to continue remotely. Minutes and video recording will be made available on our website. If you are calling into the meeting on the conference, controls while joining from landline or cell by dial-up number. To hear all available commands, enter ** on your phone, *6 to mute or unmute, *9 to virtually raise your hand. How we will run the meeting is as follows. Code of Conduct. Bronx Community Board 7 has the right to remove and or ask a member of the public to leave a meeting or block participation of anyone who engages in inappropriate conduct, including but not limited to obscene or offensive images or language, personal attacks, threats, or any other behavior that reasonably impedes the orderly administration of the meeting. Repeated offenses will be reviewed by the board's executive committee or any other assigned committee for a ban of the participants, the amount of time to be objectively determined by the above committee in the event of repeated disruptive behavior. If in-person outbursts or attacks continue, this will be considered disturbing the peace and authorities shall be summoned. Everyone besides the speaker will stay muted throughout the meeting. After each presentation is over, I will inquire if committee members have questions. Just give a quick review of the agenda. We have follow-ups from Fordham Village, Kingsbridge Terrace, VA Medical Center. We have a presentation on organ donation by Ms. Ileana Almanzar. We also have a debrief on the City Council committee meeting on the Veterans Committee. We also have an update with Woodlawn Cemetery and the Veterans Resource Fair. Let's get back to thank you. So as I was continuing, after each presentation is over, I will inquire if committee members have questions. Committee members will signify that they have a question by pressing the raised hand button on your screen or request to speak through the chat or when the chair opens up the floor. Members of the public who have joined through the online link will be able to ask questions and make a brief statement on the item after each presentation and after the committee has had an opportunity to ask clarifying questions by pressing the raise hand button on your screen or requesting to speak through the chat or when the chair opens the floor. Only those recognized by the chair of the committee will be allowed to speak during the allotted time. We shall stay on topic with the agenda item. Any other items will be acknowledged by the chair under new business or addressed at the next meeting, granted that there's time and the committee agrees on the topic. Following the questions, discussion, and public comment portion, the committee will begin their discussions after each presentation item and will conclude with the decision to vote on a recommendation. When the agenda is finished, the meeting will be adjourned. If there are any further questions related to the meeting software or to our process, please use the chat function or raise hand function now, or you can contact our district manager, Carla. Now, I would just like to go over the attendance for committee members. So we have Chad Royer, present. Jean Hill.
Present, Jean Hill.
Emmanuel Asamoah.
Yeah, Emmanuel Asamoah present.
Hugo Gonzalez. I think he's coming on later. Toby Buford.
Toby Buford is present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. So on the agenda, let's go over some brief updates. Is there anyone on the call from Fordham Village? No one on the call. Anyone on the call from Kingsbridge Terrace? Nope. Anyone from the VA? No one from the VA? Okay. AJ, do you have a quick question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I just wanted to say your veterans event from last month. It was lovely. It was beautiful as always. Great job, Mr. Chad and Veterans Committee. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for showing up. Really appreciate that. We will get to that later on today, though. We will. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation as it pertains to organ donation by Miss Ileana Almanzar. She is with Live on New York. So I would like to present the floor to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chad. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone who signed in to this meeting and also to hear this presentation. I just need access to share my screen. Oh,
I just
have it. All right, no problem.
Thank you.
Do you all see my screen?
Yes, we do.
All right, well, my name is Ileana Almanzar, and I work for Live on New York. Live on New York cares for New Yorkers through organ, eye, and tissue donation. Live on New York covers 70% of New York State in terms of doing organ, eye, and tissue donation. This is the donor service area that we cover. We cover New York City and then some other counties, as you can see on the screen, such as Putnam, Orange, and a few others. So our mission is to help save lives, provide comfort, and strengthen legacies through organ, eye, and tissue donation. We work very closely with local hospitals and transplant centers to deliver the gift of life. Specifically here in the Bronx, Montefiore is our biggest transplant center. And then we also educate communities on the importance of organ, eye, and tissue donation. This is one donor's impact. Usually one person can save up to 8 lives and also help restore tissue to up to 75 lives, and also help restore sight to 2 individuals through eye donation. So the need of organ donation in New York State is extremely high. Right here you see on the screen the data. It says there are over 9,000 individuals in New York State who are in need of an organ, eye, and tissue donation. And please keep in mind that this number is only a number for those who have health insurance and who are actually on the waiting list, not those who don't have health insurance and are not on the waiting list. The most needed organ is the kidney. Out of the 9,000 individuals, over 6,000 of them reside within Live on New York's service area, which is the map that I showed you just a few slides ago. Speaking specifically to the Bronx, because I know we're in the Bronx and we have neighbors and friends and family and loved ones in the Bronx, this data is as of December last year. The data is usually given to us by the Organ Recruitment and Transplantation Network. And they do quarterly updates. So the next update will be sometime this summer. So Chad, maybe next year or maybe towards the end of the year, we could do another presentation and I can give updated numbers, hopefully, on Community Board 7 and the district it covers. So as I mentioned earlier, the kidney is the most needed organ, and that is still the case for the Bronx as well. The numbers you see here are literally directly from the list given to us. So the list that's given to us, they give us zip codes, right? So I want you all, like if you have a zip code in mind, I want you to just write it down, and towards the end of the presentation, share it with me, because I'll be able to look up that zip code and let you know how many people that reside within that zip code are in need of an organ, eye, or tissue donation. Or you can just write it in the chat, and then I'll take a look at the chat once we're done. So understanding the process of organ donation. So these are some conditions that will lead someone to possibly need an organ donation: diabetes, hypertension, untreated hepatitis, congestive heart failure. And these are just some conditions that can lead people to need an organ donation. A lot of people usually ask us, how do people get on the transplant waiting list? The first step is to get a referral from your doctor. Once your doctor refers you to either a transplant center, they will collect all your medical history. Once they collect all your medical history, there is an evaluation appointment. During this evaluation appointment, they're just making sure that you are a good candidate. What would make someone a good candidate? Someone who doesn't miss appointments, someone who has support system outside of themselves. Let's say a family, a friend, a next of kin, a health proxy, someone who will make sure that you go to your appointment, someone that will make sure that you take your medication as provided. So all of these factors factor in for the decision of whether you are or someone is a good candidate to be an organ donor, organ receiver. And then once they deem that you are a good candidate to receive an organ, then you get listed. A lot of people ask us how are donated organs matched to transplant recipients. And this right here must match, right? The blood type, the body mass, the rank on the national transplant waiting list, and also the proximity between the donor and the recipient. We need action. Unfortunately and fortunately, there is only 45% of New Yorkers who are registered as organ donors. The low registration has led to an organ shortage. Because of the shortage, people wait on the transplant waiting list longer. And unfortunately, there are some people who die waiting for a life-saving organ. And that's truly what we're trying to prevent. These are some platforms that you can register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donation. I know that, when you go to the DMV, there's this part on your application where they ask you, when you sign up to vote, there's a part on the application as well that you rip off in the back and just mail in. And then also you could do it online through Donate Life New York State and New York State Health. A lot of people usually also ask us, what happens if at the time of death, oh, I forgot to mention, this is after death donation. This is a discussion about after death donation, not living donation. So usually people ask, what happens if I pass and I didn't make a decision for myself? And there's a possibility that I can be an organ donor. Well, what happens then is that either your next of kin, your health proxy, or that spouse that you never divorced but comes out of the woodworks once they find out that you're in a hospital would make the decision for you. So this is why it is important to talk to your loved ones or register if that's what you want, so everyone knows what your decision is. So how can we help? We can talk to your loved ones about what you learned today. You can share what you learned with them. You can ask them questions about what their decision would be if they were to ever fall into a predicament where someone has to make a health decision for them, and vice versa. You can let them know where you stand on the topic. You can sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donation only if you want to. Literally, we're not pushing it on individuals to solely sign up. This is more of a conversation starter. Take your time, think about it, but also make a educated decision based on what you know and not what you see on TV. And then also you can volunteer in your community to educate the public. And that's like if you're having any upcoming events, any fairs, or any events or any groups that would benefit from this type of presentation, please let me know and we can definitely make arrangements. And then just some accomplishments for Live on New York. Back in 2022, we celebrated the increase in organ donation in the African community, and it was something that we worked extremely hard in. We came into communities that had a low percentage and we educated them, and we believe that because we educated them, that's why the percentage is so high. And this is just showing you data from 2021 to 2022. So you can see that there was a jump. And then just lastly, back in January 2023, this year, the Bronx Borough President visited our offices and gave us a proclamation and presented Live on New York with the proclamation that stated that January 17th was Live on New York Day in the Bronx. So these are just some pictures that we took that day. And that concludes my presentation. I am going to stop sharing my screen now. And I see that there is some activity in the chat box, so I am going to go right into it. All right, so first things first is I am going to go, straight into the zip code. Give me 1 second.
I want to thank you for sharing that wonderful wealth of information. I've seen 10468, 10466, 10467, 10458. That's across from the concourse. I think we have 4 zip codes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you're muted, by the way. You're muted.
Sorry, I was getting like one of those little, coughing attacks.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So I'm going to share my screen again, just so you see what the data looks like when they share it with us. Just close. All right, so I filtered it. Now we're in the Bronx. Can you read off the zip codes again for me, please?
10468,
10468,
10467,
10467,
10466,
10466,
10458.
10458.
And I neglected 10453. Also wanted to add that one.
Okay, and neglected 10453. Okay. Wow. So right off the bat, I see this right here. In 10466, there are 52 individuals who are on the waiting list in need of a kidney donation. That's a large number. There are 36 in 10467 who are in need of a kidney donation as well. These numbers are extremely high. So those are our highest numbers up here within these zip codes: 10468, 10467, 10466, 10453. And if we go here to see which organs are needed the most, we see, so there are exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 individuals who are waiting for a heart transplant, and a large number of individuals who are waiting for a kidney transplant. Some are even waiting for double organs. But as you can see here, we have people who are waiting for liver, lung, pancreas. So the numbers are pretty high, which is why I wanted to meet with you all today and just share what is it that we do. And if you have any events coming up, please, please, please don't hesitate to invite us, because as you can see, there is a high number of individuals who are in need of life-saving organs in the community. So we're just out here advocating on their behalf, but also sharing information and demystifying any type of myths that people might have. Now I'm gonna go into the chat box and I'm gonna see if anyone wrote any questions. I see, I'm sorry, is MRAJ theorist?
Yes, ma'am. How are you today? I just had a question because only till recently, LGBTQIA plus could not donate blood. They just changed that. Is there any restrictions on donating like more vital organs? And then the second, does the family get to like follow up to like if you did donate, can your family like know who got the donations? Thank you so much.
Okay, those are great questions. So the first question, yes, anyone can donate. Anyone can donate. So yes, the LGBTQI plus community is available to donate and give donations. And then the second question is, so it all depends, right? Like if the family of the people who actually did the donation are agreed to getting connected with the recipient of the organ, then yes, there is a connection. And sometimes Live on New York helps families come together and meet each other, which is pretty amazing to witness. All right, and then I hope I answered your questions. So I see Toby.
Yes, my
Go ahead,
question.
go ahead, Toby.
My question is, I've been told that you can donate a kidney and it can be donated while you are alive, that it does not have to be harvested at end of life. Can you give more information on that, please?
Okay, so the first thing I'll say is that as of lately, politically, they're no longer using the word harvest for any type of organ donation and procurement. The second thing I'll say to that is that yes, there is such things as living donation, but Live on New York solely does after death donation.
Thank you for that information, and I will no longer refer to it as harvest.
Yes, absolutely. Just I don't want, like they're shying away from that word because it doesn't sound too positive.
Right, I understand. I understand because I definitely get it.
Thanks. Thank you so much for your question. Jean?
Okay, well, Toby kind of answered one of my questions with her question. Are you only taking donations from people who have passed away? But I understand the blood typing, but I'm not quite sure what the body mass has to do with it. Could you kind of say what that is? That's one of the criteria.
Okay, yeah. So with the body masses, right? Like if, for example, right, like someone who's petite would not be able to receive an organ donation for someone who's like 7 feet tall, because the mass of the organ would be too big for the person's body. So that's what it means when the mass donation, it must match.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with it. Well, a small person, and to give that ringing in the back, a small person, say with somebody who might be, you weigh 100 pounds, could not receive from a person who weighed 200 pounds.
It all depends on the mass of the organ, how big the organ is.
Oh, the mass of the organ, not the
organ, not the mass of the body, not the mass of like if I'm 200, but yeah, like you said, 200 pounds and then someone's 130 pounds. It has nothing to do with the mass of the actual weight of the body, but all the actual mass weight of the organ and size of the organ.
Okay, I'm glad you explained that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Jean. So I have two questions of my own.
Okay.
For one, as you may know, we lose many of our veterans on a daily basis. Some who are alone, some who are with family members. I'm just wondering, does your organization have access to data that can highlight the members who were in the service who are in need of these organ donations?
Absolutely. We actually work very closely with our veterans communities. As I told you the first time I met you, like we're usually in the Bronx, VA. I'm actually gonna be there tomorrow. And we have a lot of people who approach us with their own stories, individuals who have been on the waiting list, individuals who have donated their loved ones organs. So yes.
Because I think this will be something that will be very useful to our veterans, even if we were just to make a soft message to our veterans at a meeting. The other thing that I'm thinking of is, as you may know, our suicide rates have gotten out of control as it pertains to veterans. By chance, do you happen to know, or if there's any data that can connect suicide attempts to waiting on an organ to be available?
So I do know that some of our donations come from tragic events, as you know, attempted suicide. There is a fine line when it comes to doing events or anything surrounding suicide and organ donation, just because sometimes people don't like seeing suicide prevention and organ donation in the same sentence. So I've worked with groups in the Bronx specifically that work with suicide prevention. And although it's a hard topic to talk about, again, like within the same sentence, it's something that we need to do more of. So if you know of any other suicide prevention programs or any suicide programs that can benefit from presentations or just benefit from a conversation, or they have any upcoming events, please keep me in mind. Because as I said, it's a hard topic when it comes to both of the topics, but it's a must-have conversation because there are a lot of individuals, some people who overdose, who end up brain dead, and they are candidates or good candidates for donation.
Thank you. I was thinking along, and I'll get to you in a second, Toby. I was thinking of a situation where someone could be waiting for a heart transplant or lung transplant, and it's taking, maybe I'm using the wrong, let's just say a kidney transplant, and it's taking longer than expected. And the veteran is going through other things, and he might decide, well, what's the use of waiting? Nothing's going to change. Let me just take the next attempt to end my life. I'm just wondering if that has ever become something of prominence that could be measured by data.
I don't have the answer for that at the
Okay.
moment, but it is something that I can research and get back to you.
Okay. And in saying that, I can also ask my other counterparts who also deal with veteran suicide. That might be something that they might look into as well.
I agree.
Yeah. So Toby, you have your hand up?
I had it up mistakenly. I thought I lowered it, but I
Oh.
did.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Well, any other questions from anyone else?
Ileana, could you put your contact information in the chat room?
Yes, of course. And when I say that I'll give presentations to other groups, I'm talking about senior centers, I'm talking about tenant associations, I'm talking about any type of meeting, gathering, basically anyone who would listen.
We have some ideas that we can share offline. Some ideas.
Absolutely.
Greg, I see your hand up, Greg.
Yeah, quick question. A great presentation. What's the religious community say? I know a lot of people sometimes feel that there's religious restrictions against donation.
Yes, absolutely. What people don't know is that most, if not all religions are pro organ donation. So what we're doing is we're working extremely closely with our interfaith leaders to find messages with show people that organ donation is okay and helping someone else is okay. So we've had conversations with religions who for example, someone in the street will be like, oh well, my religion will not allow me to donate my organs. And then I'm like, well, most of the religions are accepting of organ donation. So it's always that thing where they go back into their text and try to look for a passage that says organ donation is okay, or not specifically organ donation, but helping someone else. And donating an organ is helping someone else.
Yeah. I was under that, admittedly, a while ago, I was under that impression. And then I found out, I don't know if it's true, that, it's kind of gruesome to talk about, but once you're deceased, that at the funeral home, they discard the organs anyway.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
and that changed it for me. I didn't realize that. I thought you had to be kind of, intact. But generally they get thrown away if they're not donated. So that was a little bit of a game changer for me.
Correct, because as you know, that they clean a person's body out, which is why they throw everything away.
All right, thank you.
Toby, did you have a question?
I do have a question, and I want to speak to myths. If you can bust a myth for me. I have always been told that you should not indicate that you want to donate organs, because what will happen is that the doctors will not try to save your life. And
Yes.
if you can bust that myth for me, that would be great.
Absolutely. That is a myth that I hear all the time. I am Dominican myself. That's something that my own family would say to us. So the answer to that is that the doctors that save your life or attempt to save your life are not the same doctors that come in to remove any organs or do the organ donation process. The doctors are different, the nurses are different, location is different. It's not the same doctors that save your life. So in order for the doctors who do the actual organ donation to come into play, they're called by the hospital because the person is 100% a candidate to organ donation. A lot of people have the misconception that just because they sign up to be an organ donor, that they will be an organ donor. And that's not the case, because as you saw in the slide earlier, in one of the slides, there are a lot of things that have to fall into place. Body mass, proximity, blood type, along with other things that have to match. So that's my biggest myth killer. Like, the doctors that do the donation are not the doctors that are treating you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, is your hand still up?
No, I'm sorry. I'll take it down.
Okay. All right. So, Ileana, once again, wonderful presentation, very helpful. I think we got some great takeaways from it.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, there are some opportunities that we can discuss in doing some kind of outreach that we can explain offline. I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
And I want to just feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting if you can.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna turn my camera off.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So,
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
thank you. Thank you. So I just want to jump one item on the agenda real fast. We have the Woodlawn Cemetery flagging event, which is going to be on May 24th. That's going to be a Wednesday. We're asking folks if they want to participate to meet at the Woodlawn Cemetery entrance toward the end of the 4 train around 9:45. That way we can get a sense of how many folks will be available to attend. simply put, what we will be doing is flagging the grave sites at Woodlawn Cemetery. The folks who are working there, they have the scripts where they can show us which areas the plots actually are, so that we can go ahead and do this. This will be a great way to show some respect to our fallen heroes, and the Woodlawn Cemetery, they actually appreciate that. And AJ was actually there last year. It was, and are you going to come back again this Wednesday coming up?
Yes, sir. Woodlawn's a national landmark. It's not often you actually get welcome to walk around and go see everybody. It was lovely putting the flags on the graves and then learning history about everything. Count me in. You said 9:30 on Wednesday?
I'll
Yep.
say 9:45, but if you could be there 9:30, that's fine.
I'll try. There's usually a lot of traffic right over there, but I'll be there. No problem.
All right, thank you. But you had a question though, right? Did you have a question? Or?
No, sir. It was just that. It was a lovely veteran services. CB7 needs to do more of them. Can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Also, we also have a Veterans Resource Fair on June 3rd. That is a Saturday. That's going to be from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. We are inviting all members of the public. If you know a veteran, family member of a veteran, anyone who knows a veteran, or even as a private citizen, come by, show some support, get some information. We have some community partners who will be more than willing to provide some much needed information to actually help our veterans. I know there was a point in time where we used to do it at one point, but it is our hope that we can do things like this more often. That's going to be June 3rd, which is a Saturday. And I want to give Gene Hill a special thanks for bringing that idea back to life. I want to thank you for that, Gene. All right. So the next item, which is actually the second item, which is the last one, the debrief on the May 8th City Council meeting, where the Committee on Veterans and the Finance Committee were to have a discussion on veterans related matters on the City Council level. Now, I'm not sure if anyone was made aware of this. I was made aware of this meeting with not a lot of time to prepare, but I was late.
We lost it. We lost your sound, Chad.
Oh, okay. Let me start over. So on May 8th, there was a meeting at the City Council that pertained to veteran services and the Finance Committee. And many veteran partners were looking forward to having this meeting sooner. I was one of the fortunate few who received that information, although it wasn't as timely as we would have wanted it. And I just wanted to get a sense of if anyone was able to attend the meeting and perhaps give shed some light on it. One of the biggest things that I'm hearing on the background is that many veteran partners, nonprofits, the veterans themselves, they kind of feel that there was no opportunity to advocate for certain provisions from the City Council. And I just want to go around the room to find out who actually was at that meeting. I know you were at the meeting, Joe, right? Gene, were you able to log on that meeting, or did you have some trouble?
No, I couldn't get into that one.
You couldn't get in? Yeah, they started it late. Toby, did you know about it?
I was not aware of it.
No. What about you, Emmanuel? Did you know about the meeting?
No, Chad, no.
Hugo, did you hear about the meeting?
I was not able to attend, so I don't recall if I got a notice or not.
I got you. Don, yes, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was there via Zoom. I was able to watch portion of it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So some of us were able to get on, others didn't know about it. I just wanted to get a sense of of the outcome? Was anything accomplished? Is there anything that we need to do? I'm going to get back to you, Dondi. I want to ask Joe this question. What is your take on what went down?
All right. Well, first and foremost, let me backtrack a little bit. So let me start by I want to do something separate first. I want to start by congratulating Ms. Carrera for becoming the district manager at Community Board 7. I wish you all the best. So in terms of the hearing, normally, so by way of background, I am the former citywide veterans director at the city council. So I used to work veterans issues with then former council member Chaim Deutsch. And normally, historically, the veterans hearing for the budget is usually a preliminary budget hearing because it's a small agency. So normally you have that hearing around March. For some reason this year, the speaker's office decided that they weren't going to do it. We really couldn't get a straight answer. The chair of the Veterans Committee didn't know what was going on. All we knew is that there wasn't going to be a hearing. A number of us wrote a letter to the speaker. We had about 20 sign-ons of non-for-profits, VSOs, even some community boards out of Brooklyn sign on, basically telling the speaker that, you know, look, our voice is being stifled. We're not being able to hear from the Department of Veteran Services to hear what they're doing, what's going on, what their numbers look like. And so they relented and we wound up with an executive budget hearing, which is an executive budget hearing for the council is mostly for like the big agencies like NYPD, emergency management, you know, housing, DHS, homeless services. So for veterans, it was a bit awkward. And, you know, they actually made it on the first day at the first day of the executive budget hearings at the very end. So there was also some confusion going into this hearing because in the preliminary budget hearing, after DVS has their time, the commissioner, the public gets to testify. But in executive budget meetings, that's not what happens. But what happened was the chair of the Veterans Committee, his staff, sent out an email to everyone saying, oh, you know, you can testify and you can, you know, and come to the organizations. And so all of a sudden there was this confusion on the day of, because a lot of people decided, whoa, well, the city council started telling everybody, no, it's not a hearing like that. Only the commissioner and his staff will be able to testify. That what they wind up doing is they have a hybrid hearing on May 24th that starts from like 10 a.m. to like midnight, depending on how many people the public want to testify. So there was a lot of anger in the community because all of a sudden people thought they were going to be able to testify and no one could testify. So to the hearing itself, I have to tell you, it was very disappointing. It was very clear that a lot of the council members, and it's not their fault. I mean, it really isn't. There's a lot of what they have going on. You know, they're chairs of other issues. They're champions of other issues. There is no veteran on the council. No, there's no veterans, so no one is served that's currently serving on the council. So they rely a lot on the Department of Veteran Services to kind of tell them what's happening. But those of us who follow DVS, who know what's going on with DVS, you know, what we heard was a lot of numbers thrown out, but no context to the numbers. There was no context. So for an example, during one part of the hearing, they asked, you know, how many disability claims has the department done? The commissioner threw out some number like 200 plus, and they moved on. And so the problem with that is, well, there was no context. And as I said to one of the council members afterwards, you know, what they didn't tell you is how many years or how long it took to get those 200 and something claims. They didn't give you a sense of how many were successfully done, how many were sent back by the VA. There was no context to any of it. So that was kind of the disappointing piece to begin with. There was a lot of things that they said they were doing that, you know, nobody could really, like, we couldn't figure out. Like, at one point they asked the commissioner, how many people do you have doing outreach? And he gave a number of 13. But we know in the community, it's really only 2. So, you know, there was a lot of confusion around those, not like the numbers that were being thrown out. How were they getting to those numbers? And the context, no context behind those numbers. So one of the things that was interesting, we had a number of veterans show up, disabled veteran vendors, I should say. And at one point they asked, the council asked the assistant commissioner of loan and commissioner, you know, are they helping veteran vendors? And the answer was really strange. It was like, oh, we help them every day. We're calling the police for them. And it was so wild because what you couldn't see unless you were there was all the vendors on the other side shaking their head going no and wagging their finger. And so what you had was the council members actually starting to look over at the veteran vendors, you know, at them, and not the commissioner or the assistant commissioner. So what really came out of the hearing was DVS's budget. You know, they were talking about the mayor's pegs amongst all agencies. If you don't know what the pegs is, this is where he's trying to get savings from agencies to make up the budget and spending money for the migrant crisis and for other things that he's doing. And DVS, even though it's a small agency, was subject to those pegs as well. So what we really got from it was that, you know, DVS is going to receive a cut. They're roughly going to be around $5 million for the agency this year. So it's a cut. But to be honest with you, from an advocacy point of view and from, you know, in talking to people afterwards, you know, it's difficult because on one hand, you want to argue that, look, you know, the agency needs more resources. It needs more, you know, funding. But on the other end of that is the problem that we can't differentiate what that agency is doing. You know, how many people is it helping? Like, example, they claimed they housed 1,000 veterans. And we're like, great. How many were recidivism? How many were females? How many were families? No answers. So there's this kind of issue going on where on one hand, you want to see the agency receive additional funding, but because there's no data, real data coming out of the agency, nor any audits from the controller's office, we're just like, well, if it's just going to salary, then then it's fine. Then we might as well just leave it at $5 million. So I think that was kind of the biggest piece from it. I mean, they asked them where they got the savings from. And it was very interesting. They were paying for consultants. Again, don't know what the consultants were doing. They were paying for we found out, this was interesting. We found out they were paying for an iHeartRadio commercial during Christmas time.
I remember that part.
We never,
that part.
And it was funny because we all, those of us that were in City Hall were looking around at each other like, you know, and some veterans were texting me like, who's listening to iHeartRadio? Yeah, exactly, the Christmas tree. So, and then we found out that they said that they stopped sponsoring events, that they spot. So apparently that's where they got their pegs from, their savings. But we do know that certain people have been leaving DVS, leaving the agency. So again, I would say it was a very strange hearing, and it didn't help because there was an event taking place with the speaker afterwards. So the finance committee and the veterans committee were in like kind of this rush to like, you know, wrap up. And then it was funny because the last person who spoke, the last council member, Vicky Palladino, basically she threw out like, oh, you know, we're not taking care of our veterans. The veterans aren't being taken care of. Look at this funding. And of course that got a few applause, but that's kind of like red meat. You're throwing it out, but there's no nuance behind it. So overall, I'd say it was a very interesting hearing. If, like I said, if you're following the agency, you picked up on certain things that they were saying. But there were a lot of questions behind it. And, you know, they are going to have a cut apparently coming in this next, when we get to the fiscal year 24. So
All without,
that's kind of wet.
without members of the public being afforded the Q&A portion.
No, well, that's the whole thing. So everyone, again, and they stressed this, they couldn't stress it enough. Everyone who wants to testify can come and testify on May 24th. It's a hybrid public hearing, no agencies, it's all public.
When is
So
this start again?
It starts at 10 a.m. at City Hall,
Uh-huh.
and it will run, this is what I was told, it will run until the last public person testifies. Now, that could be 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock, midnight. I guess it depends on how many people come to testify. And that's, so, but the bad part about that is, like in the preliminary budget hearing, I would get to testify, Dondi would testify behind me, you would testify behind Dondi. You would have veterans and non-for-profits that work in the veteran sphere. In this public testimony, you know, I could be testifying about veterans. You could be right behind me testifying about domestic violence. The person behind you could be testifying about mental health. So they're just gathering it all in.
So it's
Yeah.
mixed.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Jean, you can go, and then I want to ask Dondi, I want to ask you your part as well. Go ahead, Jean.
Sorry, you know what, Joe, as you recapped everything, yes, I was at that meeting, and it went out of my head because as I sat there listening to them drone on and on with nothing really concrete to help anybody, not letting anybody, you know, from the public make any kind of comment or suggestion or do anything. And I sat there and I listened, and I'd go in the kitchen, I'd come back, and they were still droning on, which is why I didn't really come to mind, you know, right away that I actually was at that meeting. And then with the last one, well, oh no, and we don't help, we gotta help the veterans. You know, it's always that flag waving, but you don't do anything concrete. So that kind of went in my head and out of my head, because that's what I really thought of the whole thing.
Yeah, and that was
Really
the
going
real,
through it in detail.
yeah, no, that was, you welcome. And like I said, that was the real big nuance about it. I would say the only new thing that came out as well was the councilman, the chair of the Veterans Committee, started talking about he wants to create a grant to give to each council member, roughly somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 to each council member. But it was interesting that it was Councilwoman Narcisse who basically turned around and said, well, wait a minute, time out. We don't even know how many veterans we have in each of our council districts. And then we don't even know how many, like one councilman may have his veterans or her veterans maybe need housing, where the veterans in my district need mental health services. We don't know. And there aren't all these veteran non-for-profits or even veteran service organizations that are in every district that we're going to fund them that money. So there was pushback, and there was never anything said about where that money is going to come from, particularly since, you know, the council and the mayor's office are having this dance with the budget right now, each one saying different things. So I personally don't think it's going to happen, but it was interesting to hear. But yeah, Jean is absolutely right. It was a lot of, you know, and this is the problem. It's like, you know, Dondi and I have said it, and you can go to Dondi afterwards. We've talked about we're getting a lot of pancakes and handshakes right now. We seem to be in that era where it's, you know, thank you for your service. And, you know, we sleep under the very tree of blood and, you know, and all this, but then there's no action behind it. And, you know, I don't know where this is all going, but I have to say, it was a disappointing executive budget hearing.
Thank you for that. Dondi, I want to hear your thoughts on the hearing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was in and out because of technical issues. I wasn't able to log on properly at the very beginning. But from what I can hear, I echo what Joe had just mentioned. But one of the takeaways that I get, and I think it just frustrates me, is that we have a commissioner that gives the standard line of, I don't have those figures, I will get back to you on that, or I will have to get back to you and look that up. And that's it makes me to feel like, well, if you don't have those figures, if you don't have that information, then how are we being represented? How is the large majority of us, like myself, I'm a New York street vendor. I've been a street vendor since 2004. I do not hold out hope for DVS to actually assist in street vendors, but I do believe that some type of workaround or work through or working with all the veteran types that we have in this space should be afforded to us. I believe something in that nature should exist. And I want to also comment about the fund that Joe mentioned earlier about what the councilman is planning on giving to each district. I'm a former chairman of the Bronx Community Board 2 Veterans Committee. Since I left, they do not have a Veterans Committee. So I'm looking to say, if you give this money to all of the community boards or to all of the council people, and if they do not have a Veterans Committee, how is that actually going to get assimilated down to the veterans within those districts? And I'm just sort of like flabbergasted how this is going about, because also, as you know, the community boards, we only meet 10 months out of a year, 2 months, July and August, we are not in session. So it's like if a veteran has a need, for me?
Sometimes December is left out.
Okay, but you know, it's like if a veteran needs services during those months, like what, you know, and if you are allocating funding in that direction, so what is the workaround for that? How do you get those funds and get that assistance or resources to those vets during that time when the community boards are not running? So that's, you know, it's just some concerns that I was just like, is anyone seeing this? So that's where I'm at. That's my my 2 cents. I'll just stop there.
Well, I'm glad you shared that info. It's not often that we get veteran vendors on our meetings. We welcome you to come by next time we have a meeting. And I guess it just means that there's lots of room for improvement when it comes to the way that money gets allocated for our veteran services. And my take from the meeting, we had a golden opportunity to engage the veterans, to get to find out the questions that we need to be asking, and it didn't happen. That's my take on it. Greg, you had your hand up. Greg, and then AJ.
Yeah, I just listened to this. It sounds like that, you know, from the city point of view, there's a leadership vacuum. I'm just wondering, has the veterans community come up with like sort of a legislative agenda? What are the priorities that then people can begin to organize around? So when the budget cycle comes, we wind up filling that vacuum by saying, this is the program. And so to even council members who might be open slates, who really may not have the knowledge, are educated through what the veterans citywide say, these are our legislative priorities. And particularly now with an election time, these are legislative priorities that the veterans have and that we would like you to sign on to and be committed to during the next budget cycle, providing support for. Is there any thought to doing that, or does that already exist in any way? If anybody could answer that.
Well, believe it or not, there's actually discussion around it now. I mean, I think what has happened is we had a lot of years there where the council, that you actually had council members that did care and took a lot of action. I mean, during the last council, we wound up getting DVS. We wound up getting an increase in the Veterans Advisory Board, veteran treatment courts. You know, we get to this council and, you know, right through the pandemic. And I think that, you know, the veterans community has been going through some changes as well. We've been losing our community. We know that, like, in CUNY's lost I'm not going to say it's a huge number, but they've lost a significant number of student vets who either didn't come to New York when they got out of service or left New York during the pandemic. So I think we're getting organized around it now. But right now we're having the conversations about what that actually looks like, because we're beginning, I think you go into it thinking, look, you have partners, that the city council is going to be a partner. And to some extent, they say the right thing, but then you also begin to realize on a political level that the Veterans Committee looks really strange. I give an example. The chair, Bob Holden, is a Democrat, but he was a Republican. And Joanne Ariola, Republican. Vicky Palladino, Republican. Ari Kagan, Republican. You know, and then all you have is Kristen Jordan Richardson, who's leaving the council. So it's like what the community and those of us who are active in it are beginning to realize is that, you know, we didn't see this. So, I mean, I'll admit we're kind of late to the party, but there is some sort of organizing. There's been discussions about a press conference. There's been discussions about a writing campaign to the speaker for a new chair next year. There's a number of things on the table that the community is talking about right now, because right now it feels like there seems to be some sort of pressure cooker piece going on. So, you know, more details as we move forward. But yeah, there is the beginnings of conversations, some of it angry too.
Yeah, I think you got to push the agenda because it sounds like that committee was structured in a way that seems very strange. That it doesn't seem like a priority committee, you know, based on who they placed. They're not the players in the council. So I think you got to, you know, do that pressure.
Well, it's funny because we thought in the beginning when the committee first came, we thought, oh, you know, they're gonna do stuff. They're gonna, you know, like, hey, they look like they care. And subsequently, here we are, you know, almost 2 years down the road. And when you look at how much legislation has been written, you know, and you start looking at the metrics of that committee, you know, you're kind of now, again, we're late to the game, but we're all beginning to see, like, wait a minute, we have some real problems here.
Yeah, in a very progressive council, I don't see Holden and Palladino passing a lot of legislation, and so they're not going to help you. So I think you got to press this. So, hey, you know, look, anything, you know, I can do anything. I think getting the community board chair committees and taking over and putting out an agenda that's public. So that you just can't say, oh, you know, we're with you, thank you, and then not do anything. But I think the public will support you. I think you can go over the head of the council.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're starting to reach out to, because we want to have conversations with the speaker, but it's been very difficult. I mean, look, there's been legislation we've been fighting on too. Like, you know, I'll give you one that is actually relevant to here. So the chair of the Veterans Committee, he wanted to create a bill that would force every community board to have a Veterans Committee on it. Now, on theory, that's great. Look, you know, hey, yeah, everybody. But when you start looking at demographics and where veterans are and districts, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. So I think we all can agree we want more veterans to serve on community boards. But the belief is, when you're looking at a first line of defense, if a veteran or family member of a veteran or caregiver comes in looking for help, it's not advantageous for them to have to wait for this meeting to ask the questions. So it's more advantageous, like my battle with him was, the agency should be training up or giving the district manager that information. So, because that's normally between elected official and the community board, those are normally your community first line of defenses. So again, there's a lot of back and forth, but we don't get nowhere. That bill went nowhere either. So
yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
AJ and then Toby.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Bello, thank you for your service and all the work you're doing. That committee sounds like the Senate from Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. I know nobody's really watched those, but totally them. I have a hot take. Since they don't want to give you guys the funding, how about start talking about taking some of that cannabis money? They say it goes to the schools, but there's not really much follow-up on that. It's still open market. And then the congestion pricing, taxes, and tolls we're about to get. Also, those new casino licenses, this money should be going to the vets and not to the politicians' pockets. Thank you so much.
Good take. Good take. Toby.
I wanted to know, since not much is happening on the city council level, what is happening borough to borough in relation to veterans? Is there a way to up the ante based on the needs of veterans in each borough? And could that be a way for the city council to move forward by maybe allotting some dollars borough by borough?
That's a good question. What you're beginning to see happen because of what's going on at the agency and what's at the council is you're beginning to see, and I've actually spoken to Chad about this, you're seeing in the communities, they start to become siloed. So what they're doing is, let's say you have an American Legion post that, like, I'm going to use Southeast Queens as an example. So in Southeast Queens, you have this American Legion post that actually does, they give out food to the community, food and stuff, but they're also working with Leroy Comrie, who's the state senator out there, and they work with this other group. So they kind of keep it now within Southeast Queens. And so what you're seeing is a lot of siloing starting to happen. Because as was said to me, when we need help from the agency, we can never get a hold of them. They don't respond. It's difficult. But yet when they need something from us, they're on the phone, like, trying to reach us like immediately. And since we're not really getting any services from them, or what they say is services, they're starting to silo amongst themselves and like do that work. That to me, while it's great and it's wonderful because they're providing for their communities and for the veterans there, it's also dangerous because in essence, their voice is disappearing. They're keeping it siloed there. It's not their voice out, in the communities, because again, we're scattered throughout the 5 boroughs. So, I mean, there's work to be done around that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So that was a lot of information or lack thereof at that meeting. And I was just thinking, something that Greg had mentioned, if we are able to put, and then when I say we, I'm talking about the community at large. If an agenda of topics can be brought forth and we can create the audience for like a press release or something, or a town hall, and then we invite the powers that be, then we'll be giving them an opportunity to not only hear the critiques or the needs, but also give them an opportunity to say, this is what we want, this is what we need. Are you with us?
Well, I think, Chad, just to your point there, and Greg was right about this. There has been a number of us that have been starting to talk about doing a town hall, but we want to do a town hall without the commissioner or the elected officials first, because we recognize that everybody in every borough has different issues and different things going on, and we all kind of want to be on the same page. One of the biggest fears that we'll get is that, we'll have some sort of quasi list, and then you'll get other veterans that want to discuss something else, bring something else up. We'd rather have, again, and these are all initial discussions about perhaps a town hall meeting is the way to go, to let everybody say what they have to say, kind of figure out what is the main agenda of what we want to see. I think for me, and I'll share this with you all, one of the things I've been saying is when you look across city agencies, across council, strategic plans and everything, there's no veterans in it. None. Like the council just put out a mental health strategic plan, no veterans in it. We talk about, all these programs and stuff, no one's discussing veterans or adding veterans and their caregiver or family members or into it. And so, I think that is the first and foremost, that there has to be some sort of recognition that, hey, if we're going to do this, I get it, that veterans are a subset, but we have to add them in as well. Because not for nothing, I mean, this is what I said about the mental health crisis here. There were, we all talk about the VA and veterans get to use the VA and all this, but there are a lot of veterans, particularly older veterans who got out with bad conduct discharges, BCDs, and they cannot access VA services.
That's true.
And there are a lot of them who are, like I said, in LBGTQ, who they got out of service either before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or even during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And when they took the uniform off, they left it behind. Women veterans too. So we know there's a segment of the population that just aren't identifying and are using regular services, not the VA. So we have to be in those conversations when the city is creating these things.
So that gives me a question for the board members. I'll even include you, Victor. What do you think the board should try to do at this point, even if it means waiting for the results of the next meeting? Any recommendation?
When is your next meeting?
Well, it'll actually be in September. We're having the resource fair in June, but if any business has to go forth, I can always raise it at the executive meeting.
Well, I asked because and actually that kind of works out for you guys, because remember, the budget has to get passed before June 30th, before July 1st. So we'll know what the numbers look like, what the budget looks like. You know, by the time your September meeting rolls around, we'll definitely know what those numbers.
Okay. Jean, Emmanuel, Hugo, Victor, any thoughts on what you think the board should do at this point, or make recommendation on?
So Chad, I'm sorry, is it in the board's priorities? When the board does its own budget priorities, is the veteran services, I'm sure it is under your leadership, but is it high on the list of priorities coming out of Board 7?
You're talking about the capital and expense budget?
Yeah, when you guys put together your budget priorities.
There's no template for it. There's no template.
again?
There's no, there, other agencies are listed, but veterans, the VA is not listed as an agency.
So you're not even in the discussion as a community board, or you can't even make it a budget priority?
What I would have to do is take something that's veterans related and place it into the auspices of another agency. Like we submitted one for the health department that had to do with providing mechanisms for telehealth. So it was veterans based, but we forwarded to the health departments. So as a veterans based entity, it doesn't stand alone on the register.
And so you guys don't even submit a request in terms of budget priorities?
Well, we submitted one this year and the year before.
Okay. That's a serious thing there. I mean, how can you hold them agency accountable if they're not even part of the, you know?
I see.
That surprises me. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's a good point. Good point. Toby, Jean?
So it's like asking a group of people to negotiate, but only one group is at the table. So I think what we need to do, and maybe we can set this as a goal for the 2024 year, is bring veterans, highlight or work towards putting a platform together for veterans so we can get them in, so that then perhaps capital expense budgeting and all of that could be seen as a necessary aspect of what the community board needs to do for vets. I'm kind of, I don't want to use disappointed, because I'm kind of hurt that there's no vet on the committee in the city council. To me, we are not really doing what we said we want to do for vets if we are not having them involved in that basic level. So what can community boards do? Can we all, and I'm new to this, and I hope I'm not talking too much. What can we all assure that there is veterans taking part in the city council level? Can we do You know, sometimes you have on the back of ballots things that you want to do. Can we come up with something so that they could be, so we can come up with something that a veteran must be on the various committees that are in the city council, even if that person, he or she, is not a member or not a city council member. I mean,
I think what you're asking for is expansion of the committee. I think that's what it sounds like you're asking. And you would literally have to make sure that anyone who runs for office is a veteran, and sometimes that can't happen. But I think, to your point, anything that can expand the awareness of veterans, if it means having partners at the table, that can be considered. That would probably have to be done on a district by district basis, I would imagine.
okay.
Yeah, but good point though. Good point. Jean and then AJ.
No, I think Greg has something else to say, and Greg is more of an old hand at how the background of these things work. So Greg, go before me, please.
No. I'm actually was trying to put my hand down. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jean. Thanks,
Oh,
Jean.
okay. To Greg and also to Toby's point, we should not have to go through another committee, put something in the budget on the capital expense for veterans. We should be our own standalone entity. And we need to push forward with that with the board. We are the Veterans Committee, so we should have our own input into what we want to see happen for the veterans. We have a lot of veterans in our community. I know we have them right here at Tracy Towers. So we need to put forth our own message of what we want to add into that expense. Now, we can't do it this year because that's already done. But let's work on it for next year. Let's identify what we want to put forth in that budget where we could get money to help the vets in our area, because in a lot of instances, they do need help. And I'm tired of all of the flag waving, as I always say to you. I want to see some concrete evidence of people really getting the help they need. Don't tell me about, oh, I appreciate your service. I don't want to hear none of that stuff. My husband was a veteran. My brother was a veteran. My uncle was a veteran. So I don't have no patience for telling me with the flag waving. Let's stop with the flag waving. Let's just get it done. So Chad, let's put something together where we have something concrete that we want to see go up into the expense and the capital budget.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Jean. Thank you for that. Random idea just popped in my head. I know there are certain meds that people have to take that are required for maintenance of their own lives. Some of it could include diabetes medicines. I'm just wondering if an example could be funding to directly compensate veterans for such medicines, and again, just throwing something that just popped in my head. But I agree with that. We have some months to go. We can come up with ideas that could be priority subject for September's meeting. I'm all for it.
Chad, actually, those conversations are gonna start in June as we start thinking about for year 2025 capital and expense
Okay.
budget request.
So what
I'll be definitely sharing more on the subject, and I'll also work on putting together a survey that we can where we can collect feedback from the community through July and August. That way, when you come back in September, you have that data to back up the request that you're going to submit.
Got you. It's just that I was wondering if necessary, we could probably submit an idea at the executive in June, because June we're not going to have a meeting. In the event something comes sooner, but I like the idea. Let's do it. Thanks, Carla.
No, anytime.
AJ, your hand's still up? Or
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
I believe the board actually did submit in the budget and expenses a couple of veterans requests. They just got pushed down. They were numbered. The veterans ones got pushed down for parks, mostly, and a couple of the health services. I understand we were just coming out of the pandemic, but I believe what Mr. Greg and Ms. Jean said, with the 7 themselves should be putting the veterans events all the way as high as they possibly could to show that respect. Thank you so much.
Right. You're talking about votes from committee or?
No,
Cap-
sir. On the capital and budget request, there was like a numbering system. There was a couple meetings where the numbers got changed and they were putting this one above the
Oh,
other
yes,
ones.
I
And the
remember.
veterans sadly got pushed down a little bit more than like a park bench. But like they were saying, those should be higher than the park bench or a garbage can. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I remember. Greg?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to just say it. The veterans have got to be seen as a political threat. I mean, we got to know how many are in the district, and then those folks have got to visit. So when a council member gets a visit from 10 veterans and say, we're paying attention to how you behave on the city council, that's where things start to change. Unless they see that you carry with you some power and some ability with your votes, that's the only time this is going to really be able to change. And I know we're nonpartisan, and that's what we have to be, but the reality is that's those are the folks that get paid attention to. So we need to organize between our veterans facility and visit each one of our council members and say, this is a priority for us, and we want to be monitoring where you stand on these priorities. And these are the veterans who live in your community and they vote.
I agree.
Yeah, that might be a good starting point, Chad.
Yeah, I like that one because the squeaky wheel is really what gets heard.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Because the fact of the matter is that you're invisible until you vote.
What I'm going to do is we have vets here at Tracy, so I'm going to start doing a survey here. So I do know some of them, but I want to identify how many vets we actually have here.
Mhm.
And some of them, I'm pretty sure I can convince them to go sit on a few councilmen's laps to get things that they need for themselves.
Got you. Sounds good.
Chad,
Yes.
real quick, unfortunately, I have to step away. I want to thank everybody. I also want to remind everybody, next week begins Fleet Week and Memorial Day, right that Monday. So Fleet Week starts on the 24th. The ships will be in town. We got the big ship is the Wasp coming in, the USS Wasp, big ship. So if you get a chance to get down and check them out, check them out. Thank you for having me on, and we'll talk.
Before you go, Joe, you ought to run for the city council.
What's that?
You need to run for the city council.
You're not the only one telling me that, but I love Amanda. I love Amanda Fier. I worked for her. I love Amanda. I don't want to do that.
Well, there's other places, but that's how you're going to change this. It's got to be at the table.
I know.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Take care. So this concludes our meeting tonight. I want to thank everyone for their input, their comments, their opinions, their thoughts, their ideas. This is a good meeting. A lot of work to do. We also have our chair of the public safety on the call, Victor Saldana. Victor, if any ideas come forth, definitely reach out to us. I think public safety may have a home for some of our veteran issues. We just have to highlight what they are. And, let's see what we can come up with. Jean, Emmanuel, Hugo, Toby, thank you for your input. AJ, Dondi, Carla, Greg, thank you for your input as well. Our next meeting actually will be in September, but what will be taking place of the meeting will be the resource fair at the Fordham Library. I actually forgot to say that earlier.
So we're not having the June meeting, but we're going to use the June 3rd at the library.
Right.
Okay.
A good opportunity to engage with folks and come up with some ideas. All right.
Okay.
So on that note, final call for comments before we adjourn the meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay. So the meeting is adjourned at 8 o'clock on the dot. Time to watch baseball. I hope the Mets win today.
This is the Bronx.